Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Michael N. DeVito, and today I'm excited to talk to you about work I did with my colleagues Ashley Walker and Julia Fernandez. Online platforms and their groups are essential for queer people. They provide us crucial social, informational, and health support, and provide spaces for exploring our identities, building solidarity, and personal empowerment. However, current social platforms and their group tools aren't designed with queer users in mind, which can result in bullying, harassment, and intragroup discrimination against marginalized groups, including transgender and non-binary folks and people attracted to more than one gender. The usual solutions to big platform problems, things like automatic content moderation, can make things even worse for queer people because these systems do not understand most of our cultural context. Platforms don't work for us as well as they could because they have affordances that allow for actions that can disproportionately harm us. These affordances express the values of the platform, which are not in line with what queer people might value in the same situations. To better design for queer people, we need to understand what queer users are looking for in a platform. Understanding what unifies these desires allows us to surface queer values for online community spaces, which can be used as design heuristics. But what would those queer values be? And queer? There's a lot of diversity of identity and experience within that umbrella term. Recognizing and fostering that internal diversity is essential. But we are also overall a marginalized group whose rights are constantly brought into question. We are still at a point in our history where a collective identity as an overall queer community is important for substantive collective action. To respect myriad queer identities, while still having the power to better our situation and make demands of platforms, we need to find balance within this tension and present a coherent idea of what queer values are overall. So we need to resolve, or at least address, conflicts around platforms within the queer community. To work towards this goal, we took an approach based in classic participatory and value-sensitive design methods, ported to an all-online collaborative format using a version of the Asynchronous Remote Community, or ARC framework. A key part of ARC is recruiting a sample that looks like the community. Here, that was foundational to our study design due to the need to attend to intercommunity conflicts. So we paid attention to key facets of diversity within the queer community, such as age, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, and urban or rural living status, to assemble a group of participants that reflect the internal diversity of the queer community. We used a secret Facebook group as our research site so the community could reflect on their own internal conflicts, resolve differences, co-construct knowledge, build a sense of solidarity. Our discussions included eliciting positive and negative experiences in online queer spaces, blue sky wants and needs, algorithmic and automatic concerns, where participants debated what values the algorithms that run platforms should reflect, moderation and policy concerns, where participants discussed the role of platform officials and, well, us, the average group member. And then finally, integration and role-taking, where we laid out the conflicts within the community values we had generated and asked participants to discuss what kinds of compromises they were willing to make to resolve remaining conflicts within the group's discussions. So, what are queer values for platform design? After using multi-stage comparative thematic analysis to analyze the participant conversations, we identified 2 queer design values which we offer up to platform designers as they try to make platforms safer and more functional for queer people. Those values are self-determination and inclusion. We define self-determination as the ability of an individual and/or group to make decisions about the people, norms, and technical structure they will be impacted by. Almost universally, our participants were anxious about the mechanisms that made decisions about them, because they don't get a say in those mechanisms, which, by and large, do not understand or account for the community's local context. To assess if a platform is enacting self-determination, you can ask of it, do I have the information and agency necessary to opt in or out of systems in accordance with my or my community's best interests? Are the people or systems acting upon me and my group doing so in a way that reflects what we would choose for ourselves? Sometimes, self-determination is about opting in or out. For example, participant 45 was extremely concerned about not being able to control which of their posts was distributed by Tumblr's Dash algorithm. Personal posts on Tumblr get picked up by their Sherry algorithm, which for me would be a huge burn the site down, delete the account, change my name, move to Mars situation. Participant 45 and Tumblr have very different values here. The platform fundamentally values the views and engagement with content that broad algorithmic content distribution can bring, which is a huge mismatch for participant 45, who's mostly there to quietly seek support from a very specific community. Participant 45, like a lot of our participants, would very much appreciate a system that values self-determination, and demonstrates it by affording opting out, not from seeing algorithmic feeds, but from being algorithmically curated. All that said, more often self-determination is about keeping control local. and many participants discussed how algorithmic content filtration deleted queer content. They mostly traced this back to a disconnect between platform and queer community standards, as participant 10 did. I don't have a lot of trust in algorithms, considering how it works on YouTube. Often, purely innocent posts can get flagged by YouTube's algorithm, thinking that it could be hateful content, while actual hateful content might be able to avoid detection from the algorithm by using more coded language. For participant 10, a flagging algorithm that targets queer content, but not actual hateful content, indicates that the control over what gets labeled as hateful resides with people who do not have the interests of queer users in mind. And platform mechanisms behaving that way has built up a ton of distrust. With platforms designed as they are, posting queer content is a gamble. And even valuable education posts with the wrong words at the wrong time can start a chain of algorithmically determined events that gets a group deleted. But redesign with the queer value of self-determination, and we can envision more deliberate human-AI collaborations, where a queer moderation team, with all the local context we could ever need, makes final decisions, with the algorithmic moderation system acting as an informational tool to aid in decision-making and reducing moderator effort. The second value is inclusion. We define inclusion here as the ability of an online group to support and reflect the whole community that the group engages with while maintaining group safety. To assess if a platform is enacting inclusion in this sense, you can ask questions like, do I and others feel welcomed in this space? Do our administrators, moderators, and policies reflect the composition and values of the group as it stands today? Sometimes, inclusion is part of risk management. Think of the fights we get into over language and expression, like participant 21 did. I see a lot of conversations being shut down over language, and I perceive it as being unnecessarily exclusionary. I think the internet is here to be used for learning, and I personally have a hard time tolerating things I see as exclusionary or judgmental of people who are simply less educated at this time. Those shutdowns are bans, usually of newcomers who are excited, don't get the language, and need guidance. But their exuberance, their use of controversial language, and their habit of rapid posting might trigger the automatic censors on bot and language grounds, and trigger the human mods to ban, because that's what the platform supports, shutting people down. The dominant values of platforms are about being secure, and the tools are 100% oriented towards bans and blocks. Sometimes we need that. There are bad actors in every group. But if we take that footing with everything, we let that platform value dictate our behavior, then we can't grow and build solidarity as a queer community, and we can leave out people who might need these spaces, who might, despite initial appearances or interactions, be us. If all you've got is a ban hammer, you're going to ban people. But swap in the queer value of inclusion. Now, we see that we might actually need an onboarding process, and perhaps an initial sandbox and probation period for new community members to get them acclimated and allow us to be as inclusive as possible while still keeping safe. Sometimes, inclusion is also governance. Who has the power in the group? Who has administrator controls? As participant 43 noted, misalignments between community and leadership can even have impacts on enforcing groups' own policies. The mod teams ought to be heavily representative of queer people of color and disabled folks. Anti-bigotry rules can only go so far if they're enforced by a group with no direct experience with the subjects the rules apply to. Currently, you start an online group and you have complete control over everything. No one but the platform company can take it away from you. If you started a group and it was broadly popular and now contains subgroups with protected statuses including people of color and you're white, still doesn't matter. Even if you're actively discriminatory, the power is still yours according to the platform, because the platform values unitary authority over inclusion and governance. If we redesign with the queer value of inclusion and governance, systems look different. Regular election mechanisms so leadership stays current with the composition of the group. Research-based community scaling checkpoints that tell you when it's time for your group to have an enforceable constitution, something that codifies your local queer values and holds those the group gives power to them. Now here's the hard part, back to that tension from the beginning. These values have to exist in balance with each other. They just don't work as well in isolation. Systems that enact self-determination without inclusion could simply install local, homonormative discriminatory regimes, which still allow all sorts of abuse and exclusion towards trans and non-binary people and queer people of color. Systems that enact inclusion without self-determination can elect a perfectly representative leadership team which has no substantive power to act, where we all agree on how to include everyone and watch in frustration as curation algorithms do whatever they want anyway, context-free. We need to honor both values, because that's how we respect our own diversity while building power. There's a lot more in the paper, including extended methods details that can help you run your own study like this. Thank you for listening.